there's this very interesting sefer that I have that I bought when I was in Eretz Yisrael. I'm sure it's still available in print. It's called Megillas B'nei Chashmona'i, and it has some of the ancient sources of the story of the Chanukah story, and some of its other midrashim that come with it that are considered to be reliable sources from a Jewish hashkafa perspective, but not necessarily that they all agree with each other in terms of the details of what happened exactly. We are talking in the middle of the second period, the period of the second Beis Hamikdash, somewhere within those 420 years. There was about just a little bit more than 200 years left to the Binyan Beis Hamikdash after the story of Chanukah was over. Okay, so anyway, 208 years, somewhere around there. Now, some of the things I'll read inside, some of them I'll just say outside, but like I said, there's different parts of the story which we're not going to cover, just because of the nature of things are all over the place. Some things are in this medrash and some things are in that medrash, and there's a beautiful Chanukah book from the Art School that puts it all together, and other sources that also to collect. And even then, they struggle to take from Josephus. They should take from the Megillas HaMaccabeim and other sources. What's more authoritative? Okay. Anyway, what we're going to pick up now is not in the beginning of the conquest of Antiochus, when he first conquered Yerushalayim, but it's later on in his rule when he came and he attacked again, and we're going to speak about some of the gezeros that came on the Jewish people much more at this point. This is when it intensified, and the general context is that the Jewish people themselves had internally been influenced by Yevanim, and even from the times that they came up, if we can imagine, when they came back up to build the Beis Hamikdash with Ezra and Nehemiah, they came back up from Bavel, and they didn't come up with so many people, around 40,000 Jews, and even those Jews needed a lot of chizuk, let's just say, that Ezra and Nehemiah insisted on, that if there had been intermarriage in Bavel and other things, that they made them get rid of it, and they had to. The Gemara in Maseches Kedushin speaks about how they were mitayr all the yuchsin of Klal Yisrael. They had to. Yuchsin is the lineage. Oh. So they couldn't. If somebody was not a pure lineage, then they had to define which category everyone was in, and who could marry who was a Kohen and a Levi and Kosher L'Kahuna, and who was a Mamzer and so on. That it was when they came back up to build the Beis Hamikdash, one of their first things was that Klal Yisrael has to be pure, and we can't have people who aren't Kosher L'Kahal, who aren't allowed to marry in, that they were married in, so they had to basically clarify who could marry who, and that was different categories. It speaks about in the Gemara Maseches Kedushin, until Klal Yisrael was fit, and they were able to continue through that purification process.
So this is, and all that whole disaster occurred as a
that happened like 200 years before the Chanukah story, but it does put the context into Chanukah that that's at least the way the Art School explains it, that when the foreign influences came from the Yevanim and they started Hellenizing, it was something that some of these people had already not been so stark, and they were the upper classes. They had a lot of reasons why they wanted to please the government. They wanted to, for business reasons, for being accepted, for social reasons, and they wanted to shed their Yiddishkeit. And maybe many of you have heard of there's a famous story with Shimon HaTzadik, that Shimon HaTzadik was the Kohen Gadol, and he was the last of the great Anshe Knesset Hagadola, Shimon HaTzadik, and he had a tremendous power, and he there was Alexander the Great came with his. He was coming with armies, and he was conquered tremendous areas, and he was coming to Yerushalayim. I'm not sure if it was to conquer Eretz Yisrael, to conquer Yerushalayim, but it was under his. It was very easily, for he could have just taken over, and subdued all the Jewish people to follow him, and he was greeted before he came in by Shimon HaTzadik, and Shimon HaTzadik appeared to him in the big day kahuna, and he had other great elders of Klal Yisrael with him, and it was a very impressive sight. And to the great surprise of Alexander's officers, Alexander got down from his chariot or his carriage, and he came and he bowed down to Shimon HaTzadik, and because of this meeting, he said that Shimon HaTzadik's image always would come to him in a vision or a dream before he went out to battle, and that's why he felt like that was the spiritual koyach, the power that gave him God-sent success in his conquests.
That's when Alexander became a Jewish name.
Right, yes, and they said that they're going to name the Jewish babies in his honor, and yes, it's still common today, especially amongst Hasidim, right?
Really?
Well, Hasidim hold on to the names of their great predecessors and don't make like new, I guess, modern names. So Alexander doesn't sound so Jewish or so much Ivrit or modern Hebrew, but traditionally it was a Jewish name, and they kept it. They kept it. So, yeah. So, yeah. So there was Shimon HaTzadik had Shimon HaTzadik's Talmud, Antigonus was that his name? I think Antigonus was his student. It says in Pirkei Avos, and Antigonus had students. One was named Sadik, and I think the other one was Baitus. And yeah, they basically went off, and this now there was forces within the Jewish people that were denying the Torah Sheba'al Peh, and they were saying that there's no Olam Haba, there's no Schar V'Onesh, different things that would take people. They basically, if you say that there's no reward and punishment, and then you go ahead and you say also that there's no validity or power to the way the sages interpret the Torah, so you're free to interpret it as you want and keep it as much as you want. And this wasn't the majority of the Jewish people, but it was together with the Hellenists who were just totally trying to become Greek, and these, from within, there were forces within the Jewish people that were less than keeping the full Torah. And according to what we're going to read now, the majority of the Jewish people remained firm in their Shmiras HaTorah and mitzvahs. I think that one of the main things that I like to think about when it comes to Chanukah, maybe we'll see a little bit of this here, is the Mesiras Nefesh that the Yidden went through during that time, not to give in to the Gezeros that were put on them of Shmad, of bowing down to idols and so on, with Chana v'Shiva Baneha, and other such stories where people fled to the forests and to the caves to try to not desecrate Shabbos, and to keep Bris Milah and so on. There was a tremendous hisorus of Mesiras Nefesh that came from the Jewish people, And the culmination of that Mesiras Nefesh, of giving up everything for Yiddishkeit, was the battles of the Chashmonaim that went against all odds and risked their lives to protect the Jewish people. And it's within this context that the Yidden almost lost everything and they got all back. The Bach, it's a parish on the tour, he explains that nothing happens to Jewish people, just no gezerah, no decrees that come from outside the Jewish people come just from for no reason from within. In other words, if you find foreign powers that are attacking and causing pain and difficulty and destruction to the Jewish people, there's something that's rooted within us that it's a gzeira min hashamayim, even though these people are humans and they're still gzeira min hashamayim. So all of these gezeiros that happened on the Jewish people this time came from foreign powers, right? From Antiochus and from his rule, but at the same time, the laxity and that was going on within the Jewish people of keeping their own observance, or the way the Bach says it is in terms of the purity and the kedusha of the avodah on the Beis HaMikdash, which the Kohanim, and Bach says, the Kohanim were becoming lax. They weren't being zaris in their avodah. Maybe coming late, maybe not doing it on time, not doing it with the proper purity. And basically, if there were other priorities that, other things that were important, more so than the avodas Hashem being given the highest chashivas, the most important point, so then this started falling in its importance. And the Kodesh Baruch Hu, in His great wisdom, told the Jewish people, basically, you can't have it like this. You can't have the Torah and the avodah and the Beis HaMikdash, which are tremendous gifts that I'm giving you, and not appreciate it, and you're not staying steadfast to it. So if you're not going to go all the way, I'm going to send gezeiros on you. I'm going to send foreign powers that are going to threaten to take it all away from you. And now you're going to have to choose. Do you want to fight for it, to get it back, and to keep it, and show how important this is to you? Or you're going to let go because it's not so important to you. And this is where the Chashmonaim and other valiant Jews stood up, and many of them gave up their lives, and we don't hear about them because they weren't the ones who battled and fought and were victorious. But who knows if it was their merit that the Jewish people were saved because they were willing to hold on and not let go. Now, the Bach says that it was Kohanim. The Chashmonaim were Kohanim, and they were the sons of Matisyahu. I think Matisyahu was the Kohen Gadol, and they were Kohanim. And it was very appropriate that since the laxity was in the observance in the Beis HaMikdash through the Kohanim, that the Kohanim were the ones who spearheaded this tshuva movement of not being willing to give up anything. Okay. Now I'm going to read to you a little bit from Megillas B'nai Chashmonai. Others call it Megillas Antiochus. Again, it's not part of like Megillas Esther. It's not like Megillas Eicha. There's only 5 Megillas. It wasn't written with Ruach HaKodesh, but at the same time, it's something that was written close to that time and was written Beruach HaTorah. So, okay, here it goes. I'm not going to read verbatim. I'll read a few parts of it. Okay. So it says in the beginning of Antiochus, Melech Yavan, it was in the days of Antiochus. He was a Melech Gadol, v'chazak, haya v'taki b'memshaltai, chol ha'malachim yishmulai. This is after his reign had become more stronger, and he had already taken control over this region. V'kavash medinas rabbis v'malachim chazakim v'hechav tiraseyim v'echleim sar ba'esh. He came and he conquered different places and did a lot of destruction. Burnt down their towers and so on. Vansheyam bebeis asurim masar. He took people into hostage, jailed them. Since Alexander the Great, I don't know how to say in English. Mokdan is Macedonian, right? That is such a word. Okay. Macedonian. Okay. Even they say Mokdan. Anyway, so there wasn't such a powerful king since him. Okay. Now he had another general that he sent up with him. But Antiochus didn't come now to fight against the Jewish people himself, but he sent up, in Hebrew they say Bagris. Okay? Now, Bagris came up, this is the 23rd year of the reign of of Antiochus. Sounds like okay. And like we mentioned, this was more than 200 years into the Binyan Beis HaMikdash, okay? Because it was 220 years, and this was approximately 210 years, 213, something around there, that there was left, and this is where things became very hot in terms of the battles. So he comes up to Yerushalayim, and Vayan Vayomer L'Sarav Halo Yadatem Ki Yesh Ama Yehudim Asher B'Yerushalayim B'Seichenu Leilekenu Eina Makrivim. These Jewish people in Yerushalayim, they don't sacrifice to our gods. V'Daseinu Eina Maisim. They don't keep our religion. V'Dase HaMelech Oizim Lasas Tachem. And they're not even loyal, first and foremost, to the king, because they are more committed to their own religion than to me, the king, who's really in charge. They also, not only that, they are longing for the day when my reign will fall. When we will have the daven for Mashiach, when are we going to have our own Jewish king? We're going to become all powerful in the seas and in the dry land. And this is, we have one people, they're not fully committed to my kingdom. Not only that, they're praying for the day when it's all going to be over and they're going to take the Melucha, they're going to have their king.
Is that what the Mitzrayim said?
That's what the Mitzrayim.
Yeah.
Mitzrayim also were worried that they were going to get taken over by the Jewish people. Yeah, they'll say that. Right.
So the Greeks had a similar problem.
Yeah, in the Chumash it describes it more as, you have to understand why, that it wasn't going to be just an internal rebellion in Egypt, but it was going to be the Jews assisting some other power that would come from without, and they would, once they had the help of all the Jews who were there, who wanted to be liberated, then that would be the end of the Egyptian power. Okay, so this is a threat. There's a power threat, and it's also that they're very different from them. They're not worshiping our idols. They're not approving of our way of life. They don't hold of it, and we're no good in their eyes. They don't want us here. They'd rather us be gone. One of the things that Shimon HaTzadik was able to tell Alexander the Great was that whoever's telling you and advising you that you should come and destroy the Beis HaMikdash is really, it's not in your best interest. Because how could they do such a foolish thing? This is the place where who you recognize my holiness, he said. You recognize, you see the Kedusha, we're praying for you that your kingdom should, your battle should be successful, and this is what Shimon HaTzadik told Alexander. And here, later on, then it helped in Alexander's times, but Antiochus didn't feel that way, and he had different Jews that were telling him that he should come and he should get rid of these observant Jews who are just a thorn in the side of the Yevanim, that are really not healthy for your kingdom. Okay. Let's go up. Let's ascend on them and and let's take away what's their special covenant that they have. 3 different signs that they have that are mentioned here: Shabbos, Chodesh, and Milah. Keeping Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and Bris Milah. These are 3 things that the Jewish people have that only the Jewish people have. As Shabbos says that it's Aisi Beini Bein Bnei Yisrael, right? It's a sign. It's something special gift that Hashem gave the Jewish people, that they keep the name of Hashem, they hold the name of Hashem in this world. And the Bris Milah sets every Jew apart. Something on, like Hashem's signed signature on the Jewish person's body, that he's Kadosh and that he's perfecting himself and he's controlling his taivos and so on. And he's keeping the bris ha-mitzvahs, that's his covenant to keep the mitzvahs. And then you have Rosh Chodesh, which Rosh Chodesh also signifies all the Yom Tovim, which Rosh Chodesh enables when the Jewish people follow a whole different system than the Goyim. The Goyim, they're following the sun and the solar calendar. And here these Jewish people, they have Rosh Chodesh, and they decide when the new moon is, and have their whole different system.
But that's the Rabbanim. That's the power of the Rabbanim.
That the Torah invested them. Yeah, the Torah invested the Beis Din, with the Jewish courts, with this power to decide when Rosh Chodesh is. And the whole system is different than the Goyim, because they follow they follow the solar calendar. Okay, the Rambam also, like I said, there's different sources. The Rambam says that the Gezerah was on Shabbos, Milah, and Talmud Torah. It's the Torah study. I mean, there's a famous dreidel game that the Jewish kids would run away to the caves, and they're in hiding, and they would study Torah, and if they would get caught, they would be in big trouble. So they had the dreidel that they could quickly pretend like they were just playing the whole time, and that they weren't really studying Torah. Okay, maybe they were studying by heart. Yeah. In modern times, you could read about stories in the former Soviet Union of people who went into basements to study Torah under great danger of being caught, and had to do so in secrecy and clothe it, and that there's something else was going on, really, that there was a factory, that they were working and they weren't really learning, they were producing something. Yeah. But this was the Gezerah that was on the Jewish people. So now he's going up, he has his advisors, and all of his armies are on par with this. They're on board with this plan. Okay. Okay, we continue. At that time, Antiochus sent Nicanor, who was second in command. So we mentioned Bagras. He's going to come back into place soon. But apparently he had like 2 different generals, and this was the lower of the 2. So he sent first the lower of the 2. If he could finish off the job, which he felt confident he could, then he wouldn't have to send the more powerful one. And so, he sends him with a big army. And he comes to Judea, to Yerushalayim. He killed many Jews. Not only did he kill many people, he went into the Beis HaMikdash and he put up an idol, Tselem, some form, some image, some sculpture. This is the place where Kadosh Baruch Hu told Klal Yisrael, this is where my Shekhinah is going to be everlasting. And he said, no, I'm going to put my idol there. They went and he sacrificed a pig. And all this is definitely not helping anything in terms of battle, in terms of his army waging war, taking control. What's he doing? He's slaughtering a pig in the temple. But this is a spiritual battle. He's trying to snuff out the kedusha that they have, that now it should be that the Jewish people should feel like lost. There's no kedusha left. It's all tameh. Let's just give it up. We have to be like the Yavanim because we don't have any kedusha left. Maybe later we'll have to get a chance to see some of the other gezeros that were made. Fascinating, some of the gezeros that were made on the Jewish people at this time. This says there was somebody named Yochanan who was the son of Matisyahu Kohen Gadol. Okay, he was. If that's who it was, so then he's one of the 5 brothers, right? Yehuda and Shimon and Yochanan and Yonasan, and there was one more. I don't remember his name. So, and he was the son of the Kohen Gadol, Matisyahu Kohen Gadol. Yochanan was his son, and he heard about this. You can imagine that he's very upset about this. He's a Kohen, he's the son of the Kohen Gadol. This is in the base of Mikdash. Many Jews are being killed. And he decided, what should I do? So Yochanan comes and says that he makes a sword. Because it gives the dimensions of the sword, 2 amas long, that's pretty long, and 1 amma wide, and it's a good thing they wore wide is like almost, it could be between like 1.5 to 2 feet wide. That's a pretty wide.
More like a meat cleaver.
But it's long. And now he concealed this under his clothing, so it's good that they wore robes back then. Now you know why they wore robes. And he comes to Yerushalayim, and he's standing in the Shar HaMelech, it says, and he says to the gatekeepers that I want to come in front of Niknar. They didn't have any metal detectors. And he comes into the gates, and they tell Niknar that the Kohen Gadol, the great priest from the Jews, he came, he's in the doorway. And Niknar says, oh, okay, come in, he's coming to honor me. So Yochanan is brought in front of Niknar, and he says to him, you're one of the Mardim, you're one of the rebels that have rebelled against the king, and you're not seeking the peace of the king, and you're now we didn't speak about the details of the context, but this context of Antiochus wanting to conquer Yerushalayim, although he was already politically in charge, was due to different things, that he felt like that they weren't loyal, that they didn't want to become Hellenized, they didn't want to accept his gods and so on, and he's saying, you're one of the rebels. You're right, I'm one of the rebels, and that's what I used to be, but now I came to do whatever you ask of me. If you want to do what I tell you to do, take a pig, and you sacrifice it, and then you'll get heavily rewarded. You'll get grand clothing, and you'll get to ride on the king's horse. Sounds familiar, right? And I'll treat you like one of the Oavei HaMelech. You'll be like one of the close people to the king. So this is what the general Niknar is telling him. So he said, really, I want to do that, but I'm scared of what the Jewish people are going to do to me if they're all watching me sacrifice a pig to your idol. So let's do this in secret. So the Jewish people will stone me. Everyone should go out of the room, and the Jewish people shouldn't see what I'm doing. But you will at least be convinced that I came over to your side because I sacrificed idol. So Niknar said, okay, everyone out of the room. And while he's getting everyone out of the room, it says that Yochanan offered up a special tefillah to Hashem. V'tikein nasa inav l'shamayim, v'tikein tefillasa l'fnei Elokav v'yomer Elokai v'Elokai v'Yisai Avraham, Yitzchak v'Yaakov. This is his words of his tefillah. The God of my forefathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Al timsereni b'idei ha'arel hazeh. Don't give me over to this uncircumcised, impure person. Kiyam yargeni, he'll kill me. Vayelech vayishtabach v'veis dagan Elokav, and then Eloyav. Then he'll go after he kills me. You know what will happen? Tremendous chil Hashem. He'll go to his idol and he'll vayomer, and he'll say, "My God, you gave me my enemy in my hands." So at that time, I don't know what Nickner was doing. He was waiting for him to finish his tefillah or something. I don't know what was going on, but it says he took 3 steps, Yochanan, and that's it. He stabbed Nickner, and he killed him. Sounds pretty easy.
The word wouldn't be stabbed.
What?
You can't stab someone with something like that.
Well, I don't know. He did it. It says, "Vayitka acher b'libai," straight in his heart. Now, who reported this? I guess it was Yochanan, unless there was somebody else in the room. There's no one else in the room, so I guess Yochanan said what happened. Now he's very scared. Look what I just did. I killed a person in the Beis HaMikdash. Now give over in the rest of the nations that came with him to lay siege and to harm the Jewish people in Yerushalayim. Let me conquer them as well. And now there are many different versions of how many people were with the Maccabeim. They definitely were times that they had that they built up somewhat of an army. It was always much smaller than the armies they were fighting against, but we're going to see that at least in this initial battle, it seems like Yochanan was on his own. It doesn't tell us that there were others with him. He killed many people who had come with this general Nickner. And then the rest of the armies were terrified and they fled. They went back on ships. And it says that, hard to believe these numbers, but I'm just reading to you what it says here. And again, this is ancient text. Although not all the documents give the same details. 72,000. And the reason was not because Yochanan was able to kill so many people single-handedly, but within the confusion that HaKadosh Baruch Hu caused in this battle, the soldiers rose up against each other, and they were killing each other while this was going on, and that's why so many people were killed. Okay, now...
What, they didn't recognize them, you're saying, or they
they definitely were dressed different than the Jewish people, but maybe they weren't sure who was really being loyal and who wasn't being loyal, or there was a lot of confusion and they thought that these people were in the way. I don't know. Once HaKadosh Baruch Hu starts making people confused, it's hard to know exactly what they were so confused. What? This chaos. This was totally not planned. They weren't ready for this.
Stories even in modern warfare where soldiers will kill their leaders in the heat of battle because they hate them so much and made them do something. It was friendly fire, but it could be deliberate friendly fire.
Wow.
Confusion. But these guys led them into this. They're killing each other. Whatever. Yeah.
Okay. So he adopted this name Maccabee, which is famous. It's a question where the name Maccabee, what it signifies. I'll just tell you a couple ideas. The one is quoted from the Chassam Sofer in Parshas Miketz in the Sefer that he has on the Torah called Teres Moshe. The Chassam Sofer suggests that it's the Rashi Tevais Maccabee Mem Matisyahu Chaf Kayin Beis Ben Yod Yochanan. And that was the acronym that it took on. But in other sources, and Sfarim, Sefer Tzvar Amar, and the Shla, the Rekeach, they say that it stands for something more famous, that Mika Moicha Ba'elam Hashem, and this was granting the success that he had in battle to being in the hands of Hashem, that it was miraculous. And who is like the strong Mika Moicha, who is like you, Ba'elim, amongst the mighty ones, Hashem. Okay, there is an alternative pshat that actually Maccabi means strong one in Greek. Okay, Sefer Yosifon writes that the origin of the word is actually Yavanis, and it means Gevura. And the Seder Adairais also brings down such an idea that it means Gibor. So, okay, they could both be true, right? They could both be true, that it was a Greek word and it also had some Jewish significance in terms of the what it signified.
What does it mean in Greek?
It meant Gvura, strong one. Lashon Yavan who Gibar v'Ishmachama. So, okay. Okay. But either way, it definitely could be true that this Messiah that Klal Yisrael has, that the battle cry, the degel, their flag, that they had, that they stood by, that their motto of the Jewish battle here was Mika Moicha Ba'elam Hashem, and that was they took along with them in battle. Okay, go a little bit further. This is fascinating stuff, and different literature, different stories of Chanukah or ideas. There are 8 nights. There's what to read a little bit more each night, or to understand better, share with children or with each other, and read about it. So this actually, interestingly, I don't know who broke this down, but I guess it's some earlier source that this was broken down into 8 parts, and it says Ner Shlishi de Chanukah, and that you could read a different part of it by each night, but yeah, okay. So we continue. The main avodah of Chanukah is Halavayda. So Halavayda means saying Al Anisim in Shemona Esrei, in benching, and saying Hallel, and
How's it every day?
Hallel every single day, the full Hallel, and then we light the menorah.
Or the full Hallel?
Yeah, we light the menorah, and remember the names of the Neiros. But of course, the more that we contemplate what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us, and we're Makir Tov, then the Hallel is deeper and the Haidah is greater, and the thanking Hashem is even more so. So if a person studies more, what it was that the Jewish people went through and how they were miraculously saved and so on, then we could get an appreciation for how the Jewish people survived miraculously and how we're here to this day based on this.
Have to be here. Because Torah has to be true, and Chakos Shemaim, Kol Yisrael, and all that, and Mashiach and the Conqueror.
Right.
It wasn't like choice.
It's true. So, but we need a certain spiritual power that gives the Klal Yisrael the eternity, the eternal power. It's the bris that Klal Yisrael didn't leave go of here. And they said, we're keeping the bris of the Kodesh Baruch Hu. And Kodesh Baruch Hu saved them. You want to say that this was all, Hashem never wanted them to be destroyed, and He wanted them to do tshuva, and He was sending them, and this was from Hashem to save us. And we'll thank Hashem for the milchamos, and for the battles, and for the gezeros, because it all ultimately came to wake us up and to realize to guide us back, to steer us back in the right direction. But something very, very special happened during Chanukah when the Jewish people went through this time of bitachon in Hashem, that if they do the right thing, Hashem will guide them in the battles, and not letting go of their of their principles, and realizing, I don't know where he got this line from, but that Rosh Hashiva of Yaakov Weinberg in Zatzal in Baltimore said that they taught their children that if there's nothing to die for, there's nothing to live for. If you don't have a value, that's what life is all about, that it's not that there's reason to live, then there's no reason to live. And basically, if you have something that you believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you're willing to die for it, then there's a reason to live. But they weren't just giving up their lives because we want to be independent and we don't want some foreign king to rule over us, and we want to be in power and free men. That wasn't what it was about. It was about a religious battle. It was about that we have a purpose for our life that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us, and we can't just become like the Yavanim, and we're not willing to let that happen. And we'd rather give up our life than give up the spiritual purity and the mission that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. So we should all remember the strength. I'm going to stop here because the time is up. The strength that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Klal Yisrael during that time, and continue to give us to Abias Mashiach to the Kingdom of Amen.